Hello, everybody. Welcome to Krystal, Kyle and Friends. Today, we're going to be talking to Ben Burgess, who's he's a great left-wing professor, and he wrote a great article in the Daily Beast that just came out about Joe Rogan and censorship and the left.
Yep.
And he wrote
podcast host also give them an argument. It says podcast.
That's right. And he wrote a great book on Christopher Hitchens, who's a really fascinating character because he was, sort of an adamant and unapologetic socialist for much of his life. And then as he got older, when the war on terror happened, he did kind of a heel turn and he supported a lot of U.S. wars and interventions. And Ben maps well, how exactly did this happen? That seems really weird. It seems like a total, flip in beliefs and morals. And he's got the answers to that. So stick around. You guys are going to really enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to it. But before we get to that, we have, at least as of the recording of this right now, we have some breaking news.
Okay.
And the breaking news is that President Biden says that a U.S. raid in Syria killed top Islamic State leader Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Quraishi. Quraishi sounds like a character in Mario. Doesn't Mario Kart character?
I don't know.
It does. Quraishi.
Okay.
Kind of like Yoshi, except not.
Okay.
It's like more Middle Eastern Yoshi. Anyway, killed a top ISIS person.
Middle Eastern version of Mario Kart.
That's right. Yeah, I'm way off. I'm way out of bounds here, but I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to keep plugging ahead. So anyway, this guy has been killed. Now, there is one problem, though. The problem is a number of civilians were taken out with this person. The last I read, and this was immediately when it happened, and usually what happens with these things, I'm telling you guys up front, usually what happens is they give you the low ball number early, and then later on they add more. That's almost always how this works. So that's just the warning. By the time this comes out, the number might be higher. But they said 12 civilians or so, including 6 children and 4 women, were killed in this bombing. Now, I want to go ahead and give you what President Biden said about it, and then you can give me an update that you saw just before we came on air here. But here's what he says. Last night, at my direction, U.S. military forces in northwest Syria successfully undertook a counterterrorism operation to protect the American people and our allies and make the world a safer place. Thanks to the skill and bravery of our armed forces, we have taken off the battlefield Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Quraishi, the leader of ISIS. All Americans have returned safely from the operation. All Americans have returned safely from the operation. I will deliver remarks to the American people later this morning. May God protect our troops. So a few things there. When he says, we did this mission to make the world a safer place and to protect us, that actually requires evidence. Was there actually some sort of imminent attack that this guy had planned against the U.S.? Of course, none of these things are answered or will ever be answered. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, listen, and maybe on a day like today, maybe the position I'm about to take is an unpopular position. Because usually on the day, you get Osama bin Laden on that day, everybody's like, hooray, it's a wonderful thing and everything, right? And to get the leader of ISIS is on its face a good thing, of course. The only issue with it is, like I said, you killed a large number of civilians, including women and children. And so what I would pose to you guys is, imagine we had a story where a police officer killed a murderer. But in the process of killing the murderer, they also got 6 children and 4 women. How would everybody react to that if this was a domestic policing issue?
Right.
Like if you
it would not be considered acceptable.
If you have a murderer who we know is a murderer because they killed somebody previously, they storm into a school and take over a classroom. Okay? And in the classroom, 6 children and 4 women, teachers, assistants, whatever, maybe one of the parents. And the U.S. drone bombs that classroom, killing everybody in there. How would everybody react to that? What would we say? How would everybody react to that? I think we know the answer.
Right.
But if your reaction is different on this one, I don't know what to tell you. That means you quite literally devalue the lives of people who are in Syria and who might have brown skin and who you don't speak their language, you don't know their culture, whatever. And I just want to inject that into the conversation. And here's my conspiracy on it is this. My conspiracy on it is Biden's got some terrible-ass poll numbers right now, and he's not doing anything to make his poll numbers get better. What's one of the first things that people go for if you're a leader and you want to drive those poll numbers up? some sort of act of war, some sort of an attack, and then look, he gets to go around saying, I killed the leader of ISIS.
Yeah,
that's what I did. And that, in theory would drive his poll numbers up. So I am fully cynical about what just took place.
Well, you've got the Ukraine escalation as well as a good distraction, both for him and for Putin, really, who also has bad domestic numbers, and for Boris Johnson, who may not survive his own COVID lockdown scandals that he's dealing with in the UK. So here's what the official line is from the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki. She said that responding to the question of 13 people killed, including 6 children and 4 women, White House press secretary Jen Psaki said U.S. officials believe that this ISIS leader's explosives killed himself, his wife, and 3 children. That actually still doesn't even account for all the people, though. Because
right,
if
and I don't buy it.
Even if you take their line, that still doesn't account for all of the civilian casualties. But what they allege happened is that as U.S. forces got close, this person detonated an explosive, a suicide vest, whatever, killed him, killed 3 children and his wife, which again is fewer than the number of civilian casualties that we've heard of. But it also reminds me, remember when they did that drone strike in Afghanistan as everybody's leaving the country and they want some sort of revenge, some sort of positive macho headline after our own forces had been attacked and killed. So they drone strike this guy and they do a press conference. We got the bad guy. He was
we got an ISIS-K stronghold.
ISIS-K militant, was planning attacks, et cetera, et cetera. And then you come to find out...
Not true.
Not true. First you come to find out there were civilians involved. Then you come to find out, because the New York Times actually got the security footage and figured out who this guy was and followed him around through his day before he gets blown up by the United States. This was an aid worker, had nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually employed by a U.S. aid charity out of California. And so what we've often found is that whatever the initial spin from the Pentagon is, it usually is way, way, way worse in the final accounting, if we ever get a final accounting.
Shame on the media for uncritically reporting it, too. Because I remember in the wake of Osama bin Laden being killed, every story said he hid behind a woman as they came for him.
That's right.
And then come to find out, that was total bullshit. That was completely made up. So they put their spin on it because that's what they do. And then the media, because they're little sycophants who don't take their job seriously as a watchdog of power, they uncritically report it. And so now they're saying, yeah, some civilians died, but is it really our fault? This guy detonated the thing before we even got there.
Right.
Do you really believe that? Stop and think about it, just from a practical perspective. Do you really believe that? Is that something that seems likely to you? No, I don't think that's likely at all. So, and then by the way, so he's on a roll today, Joe Biden is, because he also, he was at, what was it, the National Prayer Breakfast?
Yeah.
And at the National Prayer Breakfast,
this is insane.
He's stumbling through his speech and he talks about how Mitch McConnell, I don't have the direct quote in front of me. In fact, my computer just died. But he says something along the lines of, Mitch McConnell is a good man. I hope I don't get you in trouble here, but he's a good, solid man who's always done right.
Always done exactly what you've said. You're a man of your word. And this is the kicker. And you're a man of honor.
Man of honor. Mitch McConnell. There was a headline in Mediaite that said he was reminiscing about how well he got along with segregationists to play up the virtue of civility at the National Prayer Breakfast.
He cannot get off of that shit. Remember, he said that stuff during the campaign and got, attacked Cory Booker.
He gave, a eulogy at Strom Thurmond shit. This guy. And don't get me wrong, I am more than willing. I will ally with whoever on the issues that actually fit my morals and values. I don't care. I will do that. The problem with Joe Biden is the shit he worked with the segregationists on was segregation shit. That's the problem. It was the busing issue.
Right. That's the great point.
That's my issue. If it was working with some segregationists because you both want to end the Vietnam War, that's a different question. I'm all in, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. So, I don't know. How can this guy disappoint any more than he already has? It would have been worse if the bombing happened and you didn't kill the ISIS guy. Apparently we think they got the ISIS guy, right?
As far as what they're telling us
right now. But look, to me, that is not a situation where you decide to press that button. Because I remember Donald Trump's first military action overseas as president, he approved a raid that killed, I think it was a 6-year-old American girl. And I remember being one of the only outlets that talked about it. There was an article in like The Independent that covered it. Independent's not a U.S. outlet. Like very few U.S. outlets touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
But I remember talking about that and being incensed and being outraged. This was a raid that Obama didn't approve because Obama said the evidence is too slim and, their civilians might get got.
Yeah.
And then Trump approved it, and a young American girl got killed, American citizen.
And so apparently this wasn't a drone strike. This was also
Traditional airstrike?
A raid.
Oh, it was a raid. Okay.
Yeah, that's what the reporting is at this point. So
can't do it, man. Can't kill civilians. Cannot do it.
And the other piece is that there is so little accountability. I mean, I do have to give credit to the New York Times recently have dug into some of the numbers around drone strikes, not only with the one in Afghanistan where it was immediately sketchy because they wouldn't even give you the person's name.
Yep.
And they wouldn't answer any questions about what was he doing with ISIS-K and who is he? And so that raised a lot of eyebrows, and then they actually dug in. But they've done a bigger series looking at Syria in particular.
Right.
And how there were these effectively unaccountable forces that they would make up some pretext for a drone strike. They really didn't care ultimately whether it was civilians or not. They only needed the flimsiest of justification, no accountability, to the point that there was one that, a sort of inspector general type overseer type of body looked into because one of the operators who watched it happen, who didn't press the button, but who watched it happen, immediately said, I think this was a war crime and that we killed women and children. Well, not only when the inspector general's report comes out, not only do they have no relevant findings, I mean, they've sanitized it to the point they don't even mention the location. They bulldozed the site so you could never even go there to gather evidence. So this is the level of the cover-up and lack of accountability. And even when they're caught dead to rights, like they were on the Afghanistan bombing of that aid worker.
These are crimes.
This aid worker and his family, I mean, his babies. Nobody was punished for that. They just said it was an understandable mistake.
We never would have even learned that fact that now everybody cites, right-wing and left-wing, that over a 5-month time period in the Obama administration, 90% of the deaths from drone strikes were civilians. We never would have learned that fact if it wasn't for Daniel Hale, the drone whistleblower, who worked in the program, gave the information to Jeremy Scahill, who ran it in The Intercept. And guess where Daniel Hale is now? He's in prison. He's in prison because he showed the American people what our tax money is going towards, massacring innocent civilians.
And what about any of the people that massacred those innocent civilians, or that
none of them are in jail?
The regime.
None of them are in jail.
That horrible regime,
no,
of course.
So
no,
look,
they all have like CNN contracts and sit on the board of Lockheed Martin or whatever.
So I'm critical of countries that have state media, and the state media does the official propaganda and everything. Don't get it twisted into thinking that our corporate media system and the structure of it doesn't effectively serve power and serve the establishment, because you're watching it in real time right now.
Yeah.
When you uncritically report something like that, like, he blew himself up before we killed him.
Some of the civilians, at least, and yeah.
Yeah, not buying it. Not good.